All right, NYB community, thank you for coming back to us for episode number 215 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. We're right up on the Halloween season. So, uh, after spending all year wearing masks, looks like everybody's getting excited to wear more masks for Halloween. So, all of you are getting your Halloween costumes together and that sort of thing. My daughters have been, my girls are quickly getting to the preteen age. And so now they want to watch scary movies. And so they're asking, my wife and I about what movies can they watch, and some of the titles that they're giving is like, don't think you should be watching that at 9 and 10 years old. Because of course your kids pick out all the gory stuff that's rated R, and they're just cussing and killing through the whole movie, and it's like, no, you're not watching that. Um, but hope this episode finds you well. Subscribe to the podcast, 5-star, 5-star, wherever you get your pods. That helps us to continue to expand the MYB community. And of course, you can go to champronbrooks.com for more about me and to listen to any episode of the podcast. But for this episode 215, I am very excited for today's guest who joins us from sunny California. Here in Memphis, we picked up, I guess, a little bit of that sunshine after a very dreary day on yesterday, as my guest and I were talking about the weather before we got started. But again, I am extremely excited to have Jennifer Love, who's the CEO of the Living Wealthy Institute. And we've got a ton that we're going to get to today. Lots of tremendous content that I know Jennifer's going to share with us, all things that are going on these days and going on with her. And I think you're going to find a lot of inspiration today. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining on today's episode and taking time out on a Friday afternoon of all sorts.
Certainly. Yeah, I was just sharing that my candy is having the sunshine here in Santa Barbara. And I'm bringing a little ally in. So I know on one of your recent episodes, one of the gentlemen had a grizzly bear in the
Yes.
background. And I just chuckled about that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to bring in this little, I call this my little ally. It's a rose quartz. And
Okay.
I keep it in my hand a lot. Because it's a reminder of compassion and kindness and love to me.
Okay.
And so I'm just bringing this in with us today.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah,
So kind of the complete antithesis of a grizzly bear.
that's right. Bringing the grizzly bear some love and kindness, and you just
There
want to
you
tickle
go.
and snuggle with the teddy bear. That's it.
There you go. So yeah. So if one happens to show up there, then you've got your piece there that can
That's right.
help maybe change his attitude a little bit.
Spread some love.
There you go. No doubt about it. And so, Jennifer, tell us a little bit, about yourself for those in the audience that aren't familiar with you. Talk about
Yeah.
your background and kind of how you came about and evolved to get to where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've spent 2 decades, actually just over 2 decades. I'm dating myself now. Studying human and organizational behavior,
Mm,
and in the relationship that leaders have in their wealth and with their money
okay.
specifically. And I really find myself these days fascinated by metamorphosis, the process of metamorphosis,
Mm,
and the patterns of nature, and
yeah.
what nature has to teach us.
Sure.
I think I have a belief system that runs something like, well, I think we might be a little disconnected from nature, and nature's here as an ally for us, as a teacher,
Exactly.
as a guide, and so I blend and mix all of that philosophy into my methodologies. And my mission with the Living Wealthy Institute, working with leaders, is to end emotional poverty,
Mm,
um, and to reunite leaders with their innate sense of being free within their self. And
wow.
so that's the foundation of the work that I do
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
your walk of organizational development, were there various companies that you kind of work for or that sort of thing or consult with that?
I am one of those interesting phenomenons. I chuckle because I'm like, how is it that I was a graduate in a master's program, and I was asked to write a business plan because, of course, because
Yeah.
I'm in a master's business program, I automatically know how to write a business plan, right?
Right.
And
Of
being the
course.
kind, I mean, this is giving you an insight into, who I am.
Yeah.
But I was like, of course I can write a business plan. Mom always did say that I came out running and I never met a stranger. So I proved it to be true in coming out of grad school. So that led to a 10-year career as a business consultant.
Yeah.
And, I never really worked for anyone else. With the caveat that one of my clients ended up hiring me. One of the clients that I was working with as an organization was a mortgage bank. They hired me as interim CEO in the height of the mortgage decline in the US. It was 2007 to come take over for a short period of time to help turn their business around. That was
Yeah.
a fascinating journey. But the organizations I've worked with have been Fortune 200, type
Sure.
companies, from car dealerships and automotive groups to pharmaceutical companies. Not so proud of that these days, but it happened.
Yeah. Well, hey,
And everything between celebrities and early stage, kind of what I call unicorn entrepreneurs.
sure.
Um, and that was the early days.
Okay.
And that really took me um, on a fun journey, and it led me to my own path of healing, and we'll get into that probably a little bit later.
Sure.
But that I have used business as like this interesting weave in my life to heal myself.
Hmm.
And well, I think we should talk more about that. It feels like that
Yeah.
wants to
Well,
like kind of come
yeah.
out here.
Oh, absolutely. Because you already kind of can deduce what my next question is what were you healing from?
Yeah. Ooh, yes. Good question. Well, so let's see. That's maybe I'll take you back on kind of a little bit of a journey where this and like why I even do the work that I do now.
Sure.
And I was listening to Wayne Herring in one of your episodes,
Yes.
and
Tremendous.
Wayne, yeah, I really enjoyed listening to that. And Wayne had shared that he heard his grandparents fighting as a
Hmm.
child, and he witnessed that they were fighting. And I was like, yeah, Wayne, man, I hear that. You
Yeah.
know, that's true for so many people. And it was true for me too. I witnessed my parents have a massive fight,
Hmm.
where it was from that I witnessed my mother kind of coming through being disempowered financially.
Mm.
So I'm listening to holes being punched in the walls by my father, and yelling behind the door, and I'm like standing in this dark hallway, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm 3 years old.
Yeah.
What's going on? And my father comes storming down the hallway past me and out of my life.
Wow.
And mom's sitting on the bed, and she's next to some cut up credit cards crying. And I crawl up on the bed, and I don't know what to do. Well, I'm not supposed to know what to do at 3 years old, right?
Of
But
course. Right.
but I carried that forward as this, like, I never want to watch another woman become financially disempowered because of what's happening, because of the trauma, and not knowing how to deal with that trauma in their life.
Yes.
Right. And so kind of fast forward through my own journey, I had lots of traumas, as so many of us do. And
Yeah.
and I also didn't have the tools or support back in those early days on how to cope and deal with that trauma.
Yeah.
Right. And what I made that mean. Well, turns out, Ron, that I became bulimic for 10 years. So all the
Wow.
while I was consulting, and I was behind the scenes like a hot mess. And
Wow.
yeah, and so very successful on the business side, because that's where I was
Hmm.
pouring all of my energy, not sleeping 2 nights a week, drinking 2 pots of coffee a day, and binging and purging. And I was freaking miserable. Although from,
Wow.
what the outside world might have thought looked like, it would have been deemed as success, e- except
Wow.
that except that it wasn't, because my internal state was not that of success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
decided to turn that around. Here I was in 2013, um, deciding to go down a chocolate path because, well, as a bulimic, you can't just stop eating. You have to
Right.
figure out how to have a new relationship with food. And
Yes.
so, of course, I started a chocolate company. I
Yeah.
co- I co-founded a chocolate company, and by 2013, um, I was an award-winning CEO of an international wholesale chocolate company with my co-founder, and we were doing 8 figures at that point. And
Yeah.
I had through my career up to that point had raised for my businesses and many others that I had advised along the way over $100 million. So I had been in
Wow.
relationship with money and capital and this world of wealth for a long time. And
Yeah.
yet I knew in 2013 that I was starting over. I
Hmm.
knew that I had gotten myself through the bulimia, in large part by figuring out this new relationship with food, by diving into food itself. And
Yeah.
the cool part about chocolate is, just like a side note for anyone who's listening and might even be struggling with this for themselves, is that chocolate, especially dark chocolate,
Hmm.
um, it enhances the serotonin and dopamine in the brain. And for anyone who has an addiction, what we find in our research is that those who have addictions, those with eating disorders, the serotonin and dopamine levels in their brain tend to be lower.
Mm.
So I was naturally going towards something that would like literally pick up what I needed for my
Right.
brain, right? To
Yeah.
elevate it. And so I knew, again, going back to 2013, I had to start over.
Hmm.
And and I was miserable inside. And I really had to find this way of um, sorting through this pain that I I was in, and
Hmm.
creating my own metamorphosis. Right?
Yes.
That's really when my our metamorphosis really is happening all of our lives in some ways, but that's when the real metamorphosis for me began. And so it was then that I asked myself, what is it that I really truly want to become?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and that's a question that we all. When I speak with people, Jennifer, and I learned this from a mentor fairly early on in my career walk, which is you have to define, and this is a question that you don't define it once in your life. You're constantly defining what do you want to be, right?
yeah,
And that's a question
that's
that you
right.
have to. Oftentimes in MYB, for those of you listening, you often answer that question with what you want to do, right? So we often get asked from a time we're a kid, what do you want to do? That sort of thing. And really what you have to answer is, what do you want to be? Right. And that
Yes.
evolves, like you say, through that metamorphosis, Jennifer,
Yeah.
throughout our lifespan, because, every chapter of our life is a different, kind of mode. It has its own kind of world within itself.
Hmm.
As the human being goes through the life cycle, right? You
That's
talked
right.
about being young, and so it's interesting how in our lives, not to get too philosophical, but the beginnings and ends of our lives, tend to be very similar, right? Um, newborn baby, extremely old senior, right? That lifestyle tends to be very similar. It's all the things through the middle that vary a lot, and understanding what it is that you want to be through that middle goes so far. And something else you touched on in kind of early in your life with seeing your parents, and I've talked to many people through this podcast, and it's been interesting to always hear how, for all of us, how the things that impacted our youth kind of align with the work that we end up doing kind of down the line into our adult lives. It's interesting how those experiences help shape, who what it is that we want to be, that then leads to what we end up doing. And so
Yes.
I see that
Yes,
alignment in your background when you
for
were sharing your
sure.
story.
For sure. The other businesses that I founded and started and partnered in, they are all part of my healing path to get to this place where the gift is in the wound, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yep.
and the magic, that is in me to share based on what I've learned and come through, overcome, right? Because I
Hmm.
didn't have the tools or the resources or the support to get through some of that pain and trauma and know
Yeah.
how to live freely within myself to just be
Yes.
me.
Yes.
Right. Even though it looked like success on the outside, it
Yeah.
it was it was a disaster on the inside. And that's
Yeah.
not really living way. Not really.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
true. Very true. And how was that? I guess, when you've got this dichotomy, Jennifer, of having successful business life, but then your personal life
Mhm.
not really aligning with that. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Whichever one is
Yeah.
which, right? Some people, their business life is struggling. They're having a really great, run in their personal life, and then vice versa. How was that? Because I imagine it was tough when people were giving you a lot of kudos for your business success, your business acumen, the things that you were achieving, right? And you're getting a lot of love for that, a lot of attention. People are
Yeah.
giving you these very positive accolades. But then on this other side, when you go home from that, it sounds like with what you're describing that that wasn't quite as kosher, and maybe not as quite as enjoyable. So talk about how you manage that kind of dichotomy, and how you would recommend for those of us that are listening, how we can help, kind of manage through that. Because and we'll get to this in a little bit too, when we talk about the pandemic and how that maybe has accentuated some things in that mode of that dichotomy. But so what's kind of your thoughts there?
Yeah, I really want to start from the place of responding to that question with we all have scar tissue,
Yes.
right? Right. In the different aspects of ourself. I call it scar tissue. In the four aspects of our humanity, the spiritual aspect, the emotional, the mental, and the physical aspect. And it's all interconnected and interwoven. And
Yes.
so how was I managing my scar tissue? Not well. Back in those days, because I didn't have the tools and the resources and support. So, thus bulimia for 10 years. But how I began to weave myself through that, and I'm going to bring this little guy back in, right, was through
Yeah.
compassion.
Mm.
It was really through cultivating compassion for myself and becoming my own best friend. So I had to befriend the inner critic. And
Mm.
we all
I like
have,
that.
I actually call that my inner critic the three-headed drama llama. Um, and the three different heads of that inner critic who can be so judgmental, can be like a bully, and kind of like whip me into shape. And that voice will sometimes sound like, get it together. That's how my inner critic will often sound.
Wow.
And yet when I come back to this place of compassion, and then I turn to, okay, I clearly have some unmet needs going on inside of me. And when I pause and I do this practice of empathy with myself,
Yeah.
okay, what's happening for me? What am I feeling? What's my emotions? Okay, what are all the negative judgmental thoughts that are like floating around in my head?
Right.
And okay, underneath that, what are my needs? And how can I either meet my own needs, or how can I make a request to other, not a demand, but a request to other to help
Yeah.
me meet my need, right? But so many, I believe we're walking around in a world where leaders are in so much pain, and
Mm.
they're out of touch with what their needs are, what their desires are, healthy desires. And so then we're just trying, we're operating out of fear, we're operating
Yes.
out of pain. And so we're trying to get all of our needs met in unhealthy and wholesome ways that harm the world and harm us. Right. So
Yeah.
if we can come back to compassion
Hmm.
and begin to befriend the inner monsters and the inner critic, that's a
Yes.
really great first step.
Yeah.
And asking questions like who do I want to become truly, but also how do I want to be in the world with my
Hmm.
wealth? How do I want to be in the doing,
Yes.
um, as well? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you speak to something. I'm going to get to a term that you used early on that I'm going to expound on, because I had not heard this term before, but it makes a lot of sense. But I think you can connect the dots for me and the audience a little bit more, Jennifer, on it, because it's very
Yeah.
intriguing. But that the idea of organizational development and the pain within leaders, and how that can translate through the culture of an organization is intriguing as well. And I think about my own experience. I've talked about this on other podcasts where we've had discussions around organizational development, and how, um, like you said, everybody kind of brings what they bring, kind of to the table.
Mhm.
And oftentimes organizations, in the pursuit of capitalism and their capitalistic exploits, um, don't really value the status of an individual's mindset and understand their personality. I think they're starting to do maybe a little bit more of that now, particularly larger companies. Um, but that understanding of, when a person that impacts culture in an organization, and a lot of times their leadership style or approach is shaped by largely their personality and their experiences, right? And these,
That's
sometimes
right.
these negative experiences that they have, or the shortcomings that they feel, or the voices that are in their head. And I think oftentimes that explains even leaders who, um, maybe mistreat or view employees a certain way, because that could be a measuring stick on how they view themselves, right?
That's
Um,
exactly right.
and same on, on the other end of the spectrum, for leaders that are very compassionate and very empathetic. I think, that comes from their past, and maybe how, their upbringing, or maybe something, it may be an early experience that they had that, um, gave them great positivity, and they view the world as a, kind of a glass half full, space. Um, so that leads me to, I think you used the term, emotional. Was it emotional poverty?
Emotional poverty. Yes.
Yeah. I had not heard that before, but I think I kind of know where you're going with it. In the
Hmm.
spirit of what we're talking about, Jennifer, I'd love for you to kind of expound on that. What
Yeah.
that means for people, and then how that
Yeah.
impacts business, how that can impact culture.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I'm going to come back to that scar tissue I was referencing, right? That
Yes.
scar tissue is that buildup of barriers or blocks or traumas or wounds or, harmful beliefs or addictions or, fear, right? All of the things that really destroy your natural life force.
Yes.
And so how that then ultimately, coming back to business and management of money or wealth, well, when we've got all this buildup of scar tissue in one of the aspects of ourselves, it begins to blind us
Yeah.
to our own truth, like the natural state of being,
Yeah.
right? And being free, being alive, because I see that really living wealthy is a state of feeling alive, of feeling open and connected and satisfied and satiated and joyful. Not that every moment of our life is going to be just that, but that we can actually attune on a channel of that most of the time. But
Yeah.
when we have a lot of scar tissue buildup in the different aspects of ourselves, especially the emotional aspect, which feels very, very intense for so many of us, right? We don't want to deal with sadness or grief or anger, where we want to run hard and fast away from it, right? And society tells us it's not okay to cry, right? It's not okay to be vulnerable. Well, we've got Brene Brown out preaching vulnerability these days, but in
Yeah.
large part, still, it doesn't feel safe emotionally to be vulnerable, to have all of the emotions. And I believe that emotions are our friends.
Yeah.
They're our little friend buddies, and they house a lot of intelligence. We hear a lot about emotional intelligence, but coming
Right.
back, bringing that back in here, right? Emotions house a lot of intelligence. There's a difference between being smart and being intelligent, right? Intelligent is housed in the emotional aspect of ourself. Smart is housed in the mental aspect of ourself. So being
Mm.
intelligent and getting the intelligence is like the true north of what's happening for me right
Yes.
now. Doesn't make it right or wrong, good or bad, right?
Hmm.
That we don't need to have these dichotomies. It's what's true for me right now in this moment. My North Star. Okay, this is what's happening for me. And I see that so many leaders have repressed, run away from, right? Denied, stuffed away, or are bypassing their emotionality. And so they're
Mm.
missing out on all of this intelligence, and they're emotionally impoverished because of it.
Wow.
And so
And
they're making financial decisions, money decisions from a place that is only using half of themselves.
yeah. And wow. And so, yeah, it's really opening up kind of this cloud here that, leaders, even leaders who, whether in small business, large business, whatever it is, Jennifer, they have big pocketbooks. They've been successful. They've generated, if success is being measured by the acquisition of money and the acquisition of the status and the power that people believe that money brings. Um, and what you're stating, yeah, I think is very powerful, because a person, and it explains why a person can do extremely well in business. Everybody would want their life, and then you turn on the news the next day and they've blown their brains out.
Yeah, that's
Um,
exactly right.
or you turn the news on the next day and they're addicted to drugs or painkillers, or they're constantly in a state of divorce. Their relationships never really pan out or really
Mhm.
last. Um, they find themselves a lot of times in pickles with, whether it's with the government, with the IRS, or
Yeah.
they always find themselves in these issues. Um, but the way most people would define success, they're highly successful. They have the job that, you know 98% of America would love to have, right? In the role, the status.
Quote unquote, would love to have, right? And
Yeah.
yet, because I work with a lot of millionaires and billionaires, right?
Yeah.
They're a prisoner inside themselves.
Yes.
That
I
is
agree.
that is no, who really, raise your hand if you want to live in a prison? Like,
Yeah.
no one.
Well, you know what happens, Jennifer, is on the outside looking in, because you don't know that whole spectrum. And so for me, from banking, I have worked, like you said, I haven't worked with any billionaires that I've known of. I've certainly worked with millionaires. And what I've found with them at times, like you say, they can be a prisoner within that. And someone who doesn't have quite that level of means or that status, they see their life as, this would solve all my problems, right? The
That's right.
student loan people are calling me, the mortgage people are calling me, the car note people. If I could just have that person's wealth for a day and I could pay all that stuff off, I'd be happy. And so then this person on the other side is saying, God, I wish I could just walk through the mall without everybody knowing who I am and stopping me, and everybody gawking at me and looking at me. And everybody knows I have money. So I get phone calls, but I never really know if they're really up for me or just for my status or my money. And like you say, I live in this fishbowl, right?
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
would love to be able to just go and take my kids to the soccer game without,
Hmm.
everybody asking me for money, or treating me a certain way because they think I've got it, or um, that sort of thing. So it's interesting how people can come from different walks of life and see someone's life and
Hmm.
see it as the solution, the tell all be all, when really that solution lies within themselves.
That's
um,
right.
but it's difficult, and that can get clouded. So when you use that term, emotional poverty, um, that really hit hard for me. That's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. It defined, and I think about some connections I've had personally and professionally, Jennifer, that
Hmm.
where I think that was the case, and maybe still is the case to this day.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. If we could all be friends, the three-headed drama llama within us, and not be so afraid of our emotions, actually make emotions our friends, right? and
Right,
and from that place, right? It's not that we're making emotions, again, right or wrong, right, good or
right,
bad, right? Because some of our emotions are like, whoa, but there's a lot of information in them. And so when we look at living truly wealthy, right,
yes,
we have to consider the scar tissue and
yes.
what it needs in order to be processed and die. It would be like, excuse my language here, but it
No,
would be like
please.
eating an apple,
Hmm.
swallowing it. It hits your stomach, but you never shit it out.
Right.
What's going to happen, Ron?
But you're going to get sick and then never feel good.
You're gonna be like, it's toxic, like
Right.
septic system. You're gonna die
Yeah.
literally because you're so backed up, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
the
actually
toxins
find
would take you over. You'd be dead within,
you'd be dead, right?
pretty
So I
quick.
actually find a lot of leaders that I work with, they deal with a lot of issues with food, with digestion, constipation. This is a normal thing for them, right? But we've got to get the natural flow moving through our bodies as well as through our emotional aspect, right? We have to process and digest that trauma in and through us so that it doesn't stay stuck in us, so that we're not making decisions from a place of pain or fear. Because what happens as a result, well, we can look at systemic issues,
Yeah.
gender, race, like what's happening, how tech is taking over humanity, right?
Yeah.
Ancestral karma and tendencies, unprocessed shame, right? All of
Hmm.
this and unfaulty, like faulty thinking, all of this, it comes from, I believe, a lack of connection with self and nature, right?
Yeah.
And what happens as a result is conflict, poor decision making financially, overconsumption. And so then we're looking at a society who's completely in debt. And as individuals and business owners often finding themselves in debt or inappropriately allocating funds, or we're
Yes.
so undernourished and there's massive deprivation. So we're, how this shows up for business leaders is we're avoiding looking at financials, like reviewing financials, right?
Right.
We have discomfort being with money, so it comes in, it goes right back out the door, right?
Yeah.
Poor financial stewardship, right? Minimizing our value by either overpricing or underpricing ourselves in some way, giving out of a sense of guilt and therefore robbing a legacy in future generations,
Right.
um, and holding back. Like I see so many leaders, and I was one of them. I raised my hand for this,
Yeah.
of being afraid to be really visible because for some reason it's going to take something away from someone else, right?
Yes.
And therefore not asking for what you need, and even blocking the ability to receive. And
Hmm.
under all of this, what we're doing is normalizing suffering. Not only are we stealing from our own joy and robbing our joy, but we're robbing money from our bank accounts that we can take those seeds and plant them in the garden so that we can create more trees that have their more fruit that we can
Hmm.
harvest for future generations.
Yes.
Right?
Yep, absolutely. And so with the institute, with your work with your organization with the institute,
Hmm.
is what we're discussing here. This is what you sit down with business leaders
That's
and
right.
help them. I don't. I venture to say, Jennifer, that you're not doing a lot of telling with them. I think if I were to go out on a limb, you're doing a lot of listening and you're doing a lot of allowing them to kind of mold their own clay, so to speak. And so,
I'm like a human gold digger. I go I go digging for all of the gold inside of people. And
yeah.
and there's a whole lot of shit that we got to sort through first. Right. So I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. I grab their hand and we're like going on a tour of like their inner soul. And we're
Yeah.
looking at all the shit and we're like, okay, how do we
Right.
excavate this out? Let's get it out, get that shit out. And then I'm like, let's harvest all that gold inside of you. And so you're
Yeah.
right.
Right.
I'm like, I'm more of a guide through their own process of how that they personally can live wealthy and be in relationship with joy
Right.
and satisfaction and wealth in their life, money in their bank
Yeah.
account. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Love that. The human gold digger. I like that. I wonder what all these other gold diggers have been if they're not human.
The best kind
Uh,
of gold digger.
yeah. So, so, Jennifer, as you take them, or as you go with your client through this journey, what are some of the things that is there anything that surprises you at this point in your walk? Does anything about people or the um, as you work with human beings
Yeah.
in this kind of state, is there anything that surprises you at this point, or do you feel like you've kind of seen and
Yeah.
just about heard it all?
Well, that is really a great thing. I go into every, like when I do the money therapy sessions, I call it, we're going into sanctuary. I
Hmm.
start out by saying, look, I've heard it all. There's nothing that you can say to me that's going to shock me.
Right,
So it's all good, right? It's safe
right.
here. But what I have found and why I ended up founding the Living Wealthy Institute was because of the research that I've been doing over the many years. And I found that it was the money therapy work that when I started with that in the program, because I have another company that was called One More Woman, it was financial literacy for women entrepreneurs. And, I built in the mindset work, kind of later in the program. But when I
Okay.
switched it, when I turned it and I put the mindset money therapy work up front and I made it a requirement, it wasn't even optional. It was like, you have to do this one-on-one work in order to
Yes.
even like go through the program. When I did that, what happened was, rather than them um, creating more spaciousness and not having to work as much, and their revenues growing, their personal wealth growing, they're started in buying investment properties. Rather than that taking 24 plus months, I started to see that was happening in 6 to 12 months. And
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, like that was a really big insight for me of how important starting with our inner work, like ending our own personal emotional poverty so that we can be free to be with what living wealthy means for each of us. And it's different for everyone.
It
Um,
is.
and that was the thing that surprised me. Another thing that has surprised me in my work, and I'm just still fascinated by this. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Every single leader that I have worked with, and I have worked with hundreds, I think even thousands at this point, um, every single one of them has an issue with food in some way, whether it's IBS, constipation, an eating disorder, um, leaky gut syndrome. Like in some way, shape, or form, they have got some kind of relationship with food that is in blocking them in some way, that is in hindered. And I'm like, what is this? I mean, I don't have the answer on what that's all about yet, but I'm certainly
Yeah.
studying it and I'm fascinated by that. So that's another little tidbit that I'm like, what's going on here? And of course, having been bulimic for 10 years,
All right.
I'm my own case study as well.
Wow. That's, it's that level of work. One, it's always intriguing. I love organizational development. As someone that rose through the ranks in organizations, particularly on the bank side,
Yeah.
and the banking industry, Jennifer, as an African American male, growing through management trainee all the way through the different positions and roles in banking to the C-suite. Which was my last role before starting my own practice. Um, a lot of what you're saying goes back. As when I got the opportunity to work with people directly, right, in that are at the height of the organization, right, you always have your thoughts and opinions as you're coming through the ranks of what people in the C-suite might be like, or that sort of
Hmm.
thing. And when I had the opportunity to work directly with them, a lot of what you're saying, I think, really rings true.
Hmm.
um the insecurities that
Hmm.
oftentimes can be revealed with people that you would, the assumption would be is they don't have any, right? Their money, like kind of like I said earlier, their money would mask, what would you be insecure about? You're a millionaire, right? Like,
Hmm.
I'd be very secure if I had, if I went to my checking account and it was $10 million versus $10, right?
Hmm.
I would feel that.
There's a whole lot more responsibility with that in a certain way. And
Yes.
when we are blocked by a bunch of scar tissue in ourself, in one of
Yeah.
the aspects of ourself, especially the emotional aspect, mental too, we get into this place of fear about losing it. And
Yeah.
so we start how we're being in the doing, and the relationship of wealth and money starts to reflect that fear,
Yeah.
right? We're living in a country
Yeah.
that like has leaders that, you know, I mean, do I need to say any more? I'm not going to get into politics. We're about to like literally walk into our election right now.
Yeah.
But
Next week.
but next week, and God bless us, really, truly, God bless us. May we connect with nature in this process,
Yes.
and may we find our way back to wholesomeness within ourselves as leaders. That is my wish and desire for us all, that we connect with ourself and nature so that we can eliminate the scar tissue from our life, so
Yeah.
that we make decisions from a wholesome, connected place within ourselves, filled with compassion and love.
Yeah, absolutely. Jennifer, as we get to wrap up, this has been a tremendous dialogue, just to say the least. How can, for those that are listening and would like to connect with you, whether they have, additional questions, whether they like to share their stories, and for those that are listening that maybe, want to do business with you, what's the best way they can connect with you?
Yeah. Well, come on over to jenniferlove.com, and I've got a discovery form session you can fill out. I would love to hear stories. I'm a storyteller. I love to hear stories.
Yeah.
We've got workshops going on at Living Wealthy Institute, one-on-one therapy, and we've got what I call the practice garden, as well as the secret garden and the community garden, where we do practice and play. And so there's all kinds of fun things that people can get involved with over here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's jenniferlove.com.
Mhm.
where everyone can go. NYB, I encourage you to do that. The link's in the show notes for you. Go to jenniferlove.com and connect with Jennifer and her team there. Let her know that you heard her on the Minding Your Business podcast, and share your organizational development stories. Share your stories with working in organizations, big or small, whatever that is. Share those with Jennifer if you would, and be able to connect with her. You just never know where that could lead to. And as the human gold digger, she'll be able to help you.
Find that gold polished up and know how to use it, know how to be with
Yep.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, listen, Jennifer, this has been tremendous to say the least. I have enjoyed this. Yeah, you've shared some great nuggets, some great new terminology that I'll be able to quote you from here going in the future, and just very helpful for all of us. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Best to you personally and professionally, and look to remain connected.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to leave you, myself, and everyone who's joining us here today with a blessing and a challenge.
Okay.
And that is, I dare you to feel good and whole and free with wealth. And
Mm,
I invite you to be with money in its true nature, which I see as sacred and natural and regenerative.
yes. Absolutely, it's a great words and a great issue challenge for us all, and how we view our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our environment, and our relationship certainly with our money, right, and our resources. It's a great challenge, particularly at this time of the year, right before we get to the holidays season, and wrapping up what's been for some that's been a very challenging and grueling 2020. Those are great words and a great message, and again, issue challenge for us. So again, Jennifer, thank you so much.
Mwah.
Yep, thank you so much. Definitely take care, and we will talk to you again soon. We'd love to have you back on.
Would love that. Thanks so much.
Yep,
Bye for
excellent.
now.
All right, take care. All right. So that was Jennifer Love joining us here today, MYB community. JenniferLove.com is where you need to go. And she's the CEO of the Living Wealthy Institute. Listen, as we get out of here, three things, as you know, I always end my shows with this. There are three areas that we all have in common, no matter where we are from, no matter what side of the tracks that we're on. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. And if we can do that, if we can all do that, we'll all be just a little bit better and make this place just a little bit better. Go be great. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week, the rest of your month. And we'll be back here for another episode of the Minding Your Business podcast. Listen, go be great. Don't forget, champronbrooks.com is where you can go. You can connect with also our great sponsors and supporters of the Minding Your Business podcast. All that information is right for you at one location. The only one that you need to go to is champronbrooks.com. Go be great.